You are listening to the Opioid Affected Youth Initiative's podcast, Answering the Call. In each of the featured episodes, we will hear from experts from the field who will go in depth with their personal stories and experiences in responding to the opioid epidemic throughout communities across the country. This podcast is supported by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. The opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the U.S. Department of Justice.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention's Opioid Affected Youth Initiative's Answering the Call podcast. Through these episodes, we have showcased the roles of perspectives of first responders and legal systems as part of our commitment to bring awareness to the rate of overdose deaths involving opioids and other substance use disorders and its impact on community-based efforts. Today, we will be highlighting the role of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention in addressing the opioid epidemic. My name is Chyrl Gordon, representing the Training and Technical Assistance Provider, the Institute for Intergovernmental Research, who facilitates training and technical assistance support to our over 40-member network of cohorts across the country, including several tribal communities. I am elated to have the unique honor to spend some time today with one of the key cogs in the wheel at OJJDP, Deputy Administrator Chyrl Jones. Welcome, Administrator Jones. Welcome, Chyrl.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. I'm happy to be here and be part of this podcast. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, where did it all begin? Tell us a little bit about your journey in the field that kind of led you to your current position with OJJDP.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, it was not a straight line. I'm not sure many things in life are straight lines. But I remember, that was long ago. I worked on a project at the National Governors Association many years ago on maternal and child health. And then I did some private sector work as like a research assistant on violence prevention, gang prevention, child development programs, working on behalf of, in consulting organizations, working on behalf of the government. I think my most exciting before coming to OJJDP job was working for a project for the University of Maryland, their School of Medicine. They had an environmental justice project, and it was really interesting. I got to work with directly with high school students, and we just had an amazing time, really just introducing them to science. Not that I'm a scientist, but I had the good fortune of working with folks from the toxicology department, and the youth came up with their own project. It was just a cool experience working with them when I was there. And then coming to OJJDP and really finding, I feel like, my passion. And I've been here since 1998. And it's just been, I feel so blessed and fortunate to be able to say that I work for the Department of Justice, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and that we do things that make a difference for youth on the ground and their families. And so that never gets old. I've been there again since 1998, and it's just still really exciting for me to be able to know that I'm part of helping communities, helping states, helping tribes and youth and families just make a difference and have a positive impact. So I'm really blessed to be able to be part of OJJDP, part of the Department of Justice, and working at this federal level to have a positive impact on youth and families, communities, states, on just making a difference in our kids' lives across the country.
Now, you mentioned DOJ, the Department of Justice. So it's the Department of Justice, the Office of Justice Programs, and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Kind of a pyramid, if you would, of federal agencies that all have very distinct roles addressing enforcement of law, crime prevention, and youth delinquency and victimization. Explain, Chyrl, if you would, that connectivity and how the mission and vision of OJJDP aligns with that pyramid.
OJJDP envisions a nation where all children are free from crime and violence. Youth contact with the justice system should be rare, fair, and beneficial. So that's kind of like our platform. That's how we see our work. And then our mission statement is OJJDP provides national leadership, coordination, and resources to prevent and respond to youth delinquency and victimization. And that delinquency and victimization is key because they're linked, as we all know from research. The office helps states, localities, and tribes develop effective and equitable juvenile justice systems that create safer communities and empower youth to lead productive lives.
When I hear the mission statement and the vision, I think about OJJDP from years ago. The OJJDP that administered juvenile justice supports years ago was very different. Talk a little bit about that transformation within OJJDP and how the administration supports these transformation efforts.
So OJJDP supports the transformation of how juvenile justice system supports the welfare of youth and families and increasing opportunities for brighter futures. So during the past 2 decades, major reform efforts in juvenile justice have focused on reducing the use of detention and secure confinement. That's huge because we know that if you look at arrest rates, they've gone down significantly in the last 10 years. Improving conditions of confinement, closing large institutions, and reinvesting in community-based programs. Our youth do better when they're at home and in their own community.
That's the one thing about Administrator Ryan that sticks out. Now, understand that boldly displayed in her office and throughout the building are those three, her guiding, what I call her guiding principles for how we'll move forward. So happy to hear keeping the youth in their communities, giving them the same opportunities of youth that are that are not justice involved, and just really treating youth like youth, because somehow in this process, we've lost our vision. We've lost our way to really recognize the fact that there are a lot of reasons why youth are delinquent. Now, when we talk about reducing racial and ethnic disparities, it is part of OJJDP's transformation efforts. But what's the balance? How does OJJDP balance the facilitation of equitable systems that actually result in those safer communities that you talked about, positive pathways for youth, and also that still empower communities in which those youth reside?
So I will say that I think Administrator Ryan would tell you that the priorities for the office are really the priorities from the juvenile justice field. So there, as I've mentioned, as you've included, treat children as children, serve children at home with their communities and with their families, in their communities and with their families, opening up opportunities for system-involved youth. And all of these we try to do, we do through a lens of racial equity. So that's how we approach this work. And even though we're a small federal agency, we sponsor a broad array of research, demonstration, and training initiatives to improve state and local juvenile programs to benefit private youth serving agencies. So through our research and training and technical assistance, through our programs, it's our goal to address all of these needs that you just mentioned with that lens of racial equity throughout.
So, Chyrl, I think you would agree that the depth of OJJDP programming is expansive. Now, programming expectations are grounded in the development of holistic, innovative approaches that meet not only the needs of the youth, but also their families. But also, these programs don't compromise the unification of families. Now, that being said, what kinds of programming are currently being funded by OJJDP?
Thank you, Chyrl. That's a great question. So OJJDP believes in the continuum of care for communities. It's actually cited, the continuum of care is actually cited in the Juvenile Justice Reauthorization of 2018. So OJJDP funds a broad array of youth justice programs and services ranging from prevention programs for young children and youth at risk of delinquency prevention to intervention programs serving high-risk youth in secure residential settings and reentry programs for youth returning to their communities. So we think about it as this circle of continuum of care. But within that continuum of care, I'll just list a few programs that we fund. Again, we're a small agency, but our range is really broad. So our arts programs for justice-involved youth, our community-based alternative to youth incarceration initiative, our enhancing school capacity to address youth violence, our family-based alternative sentencing program, our family treatment court program, our internet crimes against children task forces, of which we have 61 across the country, our juvenile drug treatment court program, our Juvenile Justice System Reform and Reinvestment Initiative, mentoring for youth affected by opiate and other drug misuse, our National Mentoring Resource Center, our Second Chance Youth Reentry Program, our Victims of Child Abuse Training and Technical Assistance for Child Abuse Prosecutors. So that's just a few of the programs. We actually do fund a lot, but I just wanted you and the viewers to get a sense of just some of the programs. But hopefully folks will go to the OJJDP website and see all the programs that we fund. And actually, if you go to our website, you'll also see who we funded. There's a link there. You'll be able to see who we funded and the description of their programs to give you a sense of the programs that have been funded in recent years.
And I know that there's always a question about how can we break into getting funding from OJJDP. And I'm glad that you mentioned the website, because that's one way that viewers, communities that are interested in getting funding from OJJDP, check out what's on the website. Check out some of the blogs that Administrator Ryan is producing. Check out some of the conferences. But if you closely look at the website, you can get some very keen insight on the direction that OJJDP is going. Now, one thing, Chyrl, that seems to have remained consistent is the organization's commitment to looking at funding opportunities that are based or responded to through evidence-based programming and also evidence-based services, so to speak. So from the perspective, say, of a community-based organization, I'm interested in pursuing OJJDP funding, okay? So why is it important? Why can't I use a curriculum, a program that I developed? It's very well received, but it's not evidence-based. Now, aren't anecdotal outcomes sufficient to demonstrate an initiative's effectiveness from the perspective of a CBO?
So improving outcomes for youth is a high priority for OJJDP. Our commitment to improving outcomes is rooted in the belief that every young person deserves the opportunity to grow and thrive. And with that, research plays a crucial role in that process. So in helping to establish approaches and programs that effectively change delinquent behavior, lower recidivism, and help young people succeed. By funding programs that have demonstrated effectiveness, evidence-based programming, we are investing in proven strategies that can make a real difference in young people's lives. So this includes everything from mentoring and education programs to family support and community engagement initiatives. These programs aren't just about aren't just about preventing delinquency, but also about promoting positive youth development. And I'd like to add that we also have, there are resources on the OJJDP website and OJP website that will help you find, if you're looking for evidence-based programs, we have a model programs guide. And pretty much it's a really cool resource. It's been around for a long time. We're continually updating it. It will allow you to go in, punch in a target population, punch in a particular type of program, and see what evidence-based programs are out there. So in case you want to model your program after that, it's one that's already, and there are clearly identified whether this is evidence-based, whether it's a promising practice. So I think that's a really neat resource that people can take advantage as they're thinking about applying for OJJDP funds.
I'm so glad to hear you say that and respond to that question as if a CBO, a community-based organization, was asking, because our kids' future is so important. And this is not the time for something that's not tried and true and evidence-based. So I'm happy to hear and welcome the commitment on the part of OJJDP for evidence-based programming. So again, a tidbit for those of you who are considering pursuing funding through OJJDP. Think about, go on that website, look at those model programs, think about a focus that you may have, and think about an evidence-based program that could support that focus. Very important. Now, at this point, we've talked about OJJDP. We've talked about some of the philosophy of OJJDP. We've talked about the mission, the vision, the connectivity with the other federal agencies that it is aligned with. So talk a little bit, Chyrl, about how and why OJJDP made the decision to shift from a focus on opioids to opioids and other substance use disorders. So when I started working on this initiative, the first grant was in 2018. The focus of that opioid grant was around opioids, right? That was the clear focus. Over the years, that focus has changed. It has expanded. We looked at trends. We looked at the fact that our youth and families are not just impacted by opioids, but they're also impacted by other substance use disorders. Speak a little bit, if you will, to why OJJDP transitioned in that direction and what the real catalyst was behind that.
So thanks, Carol. OJP recognized that the high prevalence of mental health issues, including substance use disorders, was really increasing among youth in the justice system. And understanding that these disorders can hinder rehabilitation and increase recidivism, we funded programs like Drug Course to help affected youth and families. Additionally, the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, has announced substantial grant awards to combat America's substance use crisis, addressing prevention, treatment, and grant awards and recovery support service needs. So the the decision to address substance use disorders was really driven by this recognition that these issues often intersect with youth delinquency. And so many young people in the justice system struggle with substance use disorders. And without proper treatment, these issues can really exacerbate their involvement in the system. So our approach is grounded in evidence-based, using that word again, evidence-based strategies that address the whole person, not just their substance use. So this includes addressing co-occurring mental health disorders and providing support to families. The opioid crisis has had such a devastating impact on communities across the country, and our young people are not immune, to its effects. So opioids aren't the only substance affecting our youth. Supporting efforts to address the impact of not just opioids, but other substance use disorders is crucial because addiction is such a multifaceted issue. It's not confined to just a single substance. It really spans across various substances, each with its own set of unique challenges. So by broadening the focus, we can provide more inclusive and effective support and services. And so this approach really looks at the complexity of addiction and ensures that we're not just addressing one piece of a larger puzzle. So it allows us to provide more comprehensive and tailored support to young people and their families, hopefully leading to more effective interventions and better outcomes. So it's really about creating a holistic strategy that can adapt to the diverse needs of those who we're trying to serve.
In other words, OJJDP stepped up to the plate at a time that they needed to, because realizing that we can't just operate as we did years ago. And that also goes back to Chyrl, the transformation efforts. When we see OJJDP from 20 years ago and then the OJJDP today, it's very different, but it's also more positively, more proactively addressing the needs of youth and their families. So moving from opioids to other substance use disorders was the perfect way to address where we are today, because it's not just about opioids. It is about so many other substances. And then when we think about the illicit drugs that are put on top of the opioids, we're like, oh my God, will it ever end? So kudos to OJJDP that you had the insight to see that that needed to be changed as well in order to help communities who are interested in addressing that. And even from the grantees that we work with through the Opioid Affected Youth Initiative, we see very interesting narratives. We see very interesting programming and services that are not just dealing with opioids, but they're dealing with mental health. They're dealing with other aspects. They're dealing with workforce development. They're dealing with so many other things and so many other disorders. Now, the question arises, Chyrl, where is the money? What kind of funding is available from OJJDP to support what we're talking about through these opioids and other substance use disorders?
Sure. So in fiscal year 2023, OJDP awarded a total of, I'm just going to round it up, about a little over $9.5 million to support the Opioid Affected Youth Initiative. And our grantees are amazing. I will say that I've had a chance to sit in on some of the new grantee orientations, and I regularly talk to the leadership and the staff of the team that manage these. And so we're just excited that we've got such amazing grantees that are really making a difference on the ground. But so that little over 9.5 million that I told you, that this initiative supports states, communities, tribes, and nonprofit organizations implementing programs and strategies that treat children, youth, and families impacted by the opioid epidemic and other substance use disorders. So an additional amount of funding was also allocated for training and TA because we want to make sure that these grantees have the right resources to be effective and successful with their programming. So training and TA is a critical piece of the work that we do with our grantees and with communities. So the expectations of these grantees include, developing and implementing effective data-driven and coordinated responses to opioid use-related challenges that impact youth and safety, community safety. So, funding is a critical part of our response to the opioid crisis and other substance use disorders. These funds are used to support a range of initiatives from prevention and education programs to treatment and recovery services. But the funding is not just about providing resources, it's about fostering innovation and encouraging communities to develop new and effective approaches to these challenges. So even though I talk about evidence-based programming, we are very much open because every community is different and they need to be able to, they know what's best for their community. And so they need that flexibility, they need that support from OJJDP and our TTA providers to be able to be successful. So,
Funny you should mention that, Chyrl, because it's our approach at IAR. When we provide technical assistance, and we share this with our grantees all the time, they are the boots on the ground. How can we tell them what needs to happen in their communities? We can give them our best advice, our best area of expertise. But when the rubber really hits the pavement, it's about what's going to work in those individual communities. So I'm glad to hear you say that even though we've thrown out evidence-based programming, we've thrown out holistic approaches, we've thrown out the need to continue to unify youth and families, but it's also about what's actually going on the ground and how grantees can customize whatever they're doing in order to make that fit and serve the needs of those youth and families. Now, $9.5 million, that's a pretty sizable amount that was awarded in 23. Mm-hmm. Now, I know for the OYA awards, Opioid Affected Youth Initiative awards, they seem to range anywhere from about between $700,000 and $1 million or so. So any other tidbits that you have on how potential grantees can actually strengthen their approaches to responding to any upcoming opioid and other substance use disorder grants or funding opportunities?
Yeah. I think potential grantees can strengthen their efforts to get funding by developing and accessing the comprehensive evidence-based programs, of course, that address the specific needs of the communities. They should show strong collaborations with local stakeholders and show a commitment to evaluating their efforts and making necessary adjustments. One of the things that we're big on right now at OJJDP, and we're making this just a part of how we do business, is having youth and family voice be part of the program, not just a head nod, not just a kind of, a token, if you will, but really being part of the programming. So we're looking for that in applications now. How are you incorporating their voice, their ideas into your program plan? So, that strong collaboration with local communities and stakeholders, is going to be helpful. The youth and family voice, evidence-based programming, securing funding. I know it's a complex issue, and there's issues around sustainability. I know, and I think that's something that we always have our TTA providers and we try to support grantees with. But I think those are the things that we're looking for: the strong partnerships, the youth and family voice. Really looking at the needs and addressing the needs of their community. And I think together, just fostering that collaboration. And then we will do our part on building community within the grantees and the training and TA.
Now, I want to revisit the discussion on elevating that youth voice in just a minute. But before I do, I want to kind of go back to, as a follow-up to the initial question, because you've been in this lane for a while, right? Working on the ground with grantees, administering processes related to boots on the ground. What challenges do you foresee in seeking funding opportunities from OJJDP?
So I will say we are a small agency, and this is one of our competitive programs. So we don't have the funding that I think we'd like to have to be able to fund all the programs that come in. And so I think the challenges are that it's a competitive program, and there are we are very interested in trying to fund grantees and communities that we haven't funded before. So we're not funding the same community-based organizations. So I think, again, if the grantees think about or the potential grantees think about collaborating with their community partners, using evidence-based programming, going on our website and seeing what's been funded before. We do webinars. We do solicitation webinars. So right after the solicitation goes live, usually a few days after that, we will host a webinar. OJJDP will go over the program. You'll have a chance to ask questions about the program and some of the activities. So I really encourage people to take advantage of those solicitation webinars. And again, I put your best foot forward, but I just think securing funding is tricky. It's challenging. Again, I think we just want to make sure that you're just using the evidence-based programs, understanding that there are limited resources. And I know that there's sometimes a lack of expertise in grant writing, and that can be a challenge because I know sometimes the organization can have really strong grant writers. But we are always looking at it as a lens like, okay, they may not have had the you can tell maybe it wasn't written by a grant writer, but they've got a really solid plan. And we think they're worth investing in, and we will provide this extra TTA and extra handholding just to make sure that they're successful. So I think addressing these things will help with overcoming the hurdles around capacity funding, capacity building, and fostering collaborations. And OJJDP will just support whoever we award. We really go all in with our TT bearers to make sure that they are effective. And then that helps them, I think, future funding opportunities, whether that's local funding, state funding, foundation funding, if they're able to show that they were successful with the seed money that we're able to invest in them.
And I think I wholeheartedly agree with you. You have to be able to articulate what it is you want to do, why you want to do it, and how you will do that in an innovative, inclusive way. And I think all of those things are key in really positioning yourself. Chyrl, excellent suggestion that you gave earlier. Check out who else is being funded. Go on the website. We can't remind you enough. We can't drive you to that website enough. Look and see what's out there. The administrator is always trending in the sense that she's sharing a nugget about her vision and about what she's looking for and the expectations. So sometimes it may be as little as joining a webinar that maybe is not necessarily in your wheelhouse, but it's something that you can get more information on because that is a topic that is trending and is very important to the agency. Now, as I said previously, one component that we have not yet addressed is the involvement of those who are most impacted, the youth, the young people, the emerging leaders. In fact, more and more strategies are emerging focused specifically on incorporating youth voice, and not just on paper, but actually in meaningful ways so that we are treating those young people, those emerging leaders as with respect and recognizing the fact that their lived experiences also mean a whole lot. Why, from OJJDP's perspective, is it important to continue to drive home this whole notion of elevating the youth voice in addressing not just what else is going on in the world, but also in this opioid epidemic?
So before I answer that question, I just want to share one thing that under Liz's leadership, one thing that we're really excited about at OJJDP is that we did start a youth and family partnership work group. It's internal, but we have experts that we work with as consultants who are young adults, who are family members who have lived experience. And it has really just, I think, opened our eyes, and our plan is to really operationalize this work throughout all the aspects of OJJDP. And so we've done a training for our staff. We've done training for our TTA providers. It's now part of our solicitations where applicants have to address this. So we're making it part of our peer review process. So we're really trying to incorporate this. So we're not just asking applicants to do this. We're not just asking grantees to do this. We are doing this at OJJDP because we understand the importance of it and how much more meaningful the work is when you incorporate youth and family voice. So I just wanted to put the plug in just to let folks know that
Yes.
OJP is putting its mouth. Her leadership is amazing, and it really is moving us in a direction, I think, to really to be better at the services and the programs that we provide. So with that said, let me answer the question. So empowering youth and elevating their voices is just crucial to the opioid epidemic. They have unique perspectives and experiences. They keep it real. They will tell you what works, what doesn't work with them. So they can provide valuable insights, on effective strategies, prevention and treatment. So it's not just about giving them voice, but it's also about ensuring that their voices are heard and valued. So I think one of the things that we look for in applications now is that, again, when I said not just a token, not just kind of a head nod, how are you using youth and family voice in your program? How do you plan to do that? So I think successful applicants will include that kind of thing in their description in their applications. So young people, because they have these unique insights and perspectives, it's going to help us greatly enhance our efforts to address the opioid epidemic and other substance use disorders. So they're often at the forefront of societal changes anyway, young people are. And so they can provide firsthand accounts of how, what challenges they face and things that they think that will help us help them. So by giving them this platform, platform of their voice to share their experiences and their ideas, we'll be able to more effectively treat and combat this whole epidemic. And moreover, just involving youth just fosters a sense of ownership and responsibility on their part. So it encourages them to be part of the solution. So yeah, it's our goal to involve them in decision making throughout the process, so that we are making sure that we are on the right path as OJDP and as our grantees. So it's really critical and crucial to everything that we're doing going forward.
And, I'm thinking about years ago how this OJJDP, the programming is for youth, right? But somehow, even as training and technical assistance providers, organizations, we forgot to ask the actual youth who were being served what they thought about Program A. What do you think about Service B? Can we get you to be part of a planning process so that you're helping us vision what needs to happen in the future? And
Right.
That is so important. I mean, we got it as a TTA provider and have really put forth and are very proud of the fact that we have a youth advisory board. And with that youth advisory board, they meet on a regular basis. They're being headed by Darian Appleton with our organization, who's the youth advisory board coordinator. They meet on a regular basis. Darian always shares stories of how the youth are saying, wait, those emerging leaders are saying, hold up, we need to go in another direction. And they are very passionate. They're very appreciative of this work. We have a couple of projects down the pike, and we are including youth as part of those planning committees because we want to know up front. Chyrl, it's almost like if you spoon feed someone and you shove it down their throats, they may take it. They may take it for a long period of time. But after a certain period of time, they're going to push back because they don't feel ownership. They don't feel a part of it. And what is so important is OJJDP's philosophy to make sure that they are included up front. Because we could always put a youth's name on a sheet of paper and say, oh, yes, they attended this meeting. But what did they contribute? What role did they have? Were they involved in the planning? So that's a very, very good approach, very good direction that we're moving in. And again, another nugget for those individuals who may be out there viewing this. When you want to know what is an OJJDP expectation, engagement and elevation of the youth voice. Another tip. So as we round out our discussion, Chyrl, and it's been just absolutely great having this opportunity to spend time with you and chat a little bit about OJJDP and its role in what's going on with the opioid and other substance use disorder epidemic. Would you like to share any other funding nuggets, any unveilings of something that may be coming down the pike at OJJDP as we close out our conversation?
The OJDP website is a vast resource. There is a youth and family partnership website within the OJJDP webpage. So that's a huge resource. It's a resource in terms of publications, webinars. We recorded a webinar last year around this so that applicants can take advantage of that. There's a lot of research on there. There's a lot of programming ideas on there. So I just think I would encourage folks to access that and make that one of your favorites, the OJJDP website. I think I would also encourage people to again take advantage of solicitation webinars when they come out. And to sign up for our JuveJust, which I'll include information that will be part of this podcast, because if you sign up for our JuveJust, you'll become aware of trainings that are available, webinars, funding opportunities, research publications. You're just kept in the know. We have a OJJDP News at a Glance that comes out. So I just think that's a really great resource to be keep your finger on the pulse of everything at OJJDP that's happening. And that will be included as part of the podcast. Thank you.
Deputy Administrator Jones, thank you so much, Chyrl. Thank you so much. Lots to unpack, lots to process. What a great conversation. So much information, so little time. If you would like more information on the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention's philosophy, structure, or funding opportunities, please visit their website. Chyrl has mentioned that website several times, ojjdp.ojp.gov. ojjdp.ojp.gov. If you would like more information on the training and technical assistance resources supporting communities across the country, including tribal communities, visit the OAA Opioid Affected Youth Initiative website at opioidaffectedyouth.org. That's opioidaffectedyouth.org. We truly appreciate those of you viewing this podcast and invite you to check out other episodes of Answering the Call by accessing our YouTube channel as well as Buzzsprout and its associated platforms. We will see you next time.
The Opioid Affected Youth Initiative is deeply committed to supporting the science and community-based efforts to combat the opioid crisis. The discussions that are part of these podcasts support this level of commitment. For additional information regarding the Opioid Initiative, visit us at www.opioidaffectedyouth.org. We also invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel to view upcoming broadcasts or simply send us an email requesting appropriate links at oayi-info@iira.com.